All right, so let's go over the course policies for this semester. So first off, obviously it is an online course. All the lectures will be online. Everything will be recorded and accessible to you. There are two exceptions in terms of coming to campus. So we will be having two exams, a midterm exam on July 21st, which is a Tuesday, and a final exam on the last day of the semester in August. These final exams or these exams will require you to do some live programming. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this recording. But I am requiring you to come to campus and actually take those exams in seat in one of the labs on campus with me. There'll be two time slots for each one of these exams. So, for example, on the midterm, July 21st, you could sign up for a 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. time slot or a 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. time slot. Hopefully, on each of these 2 days, one of those time slots should work for you. I can be pretty flexible with you. If you need to take this on another day, there's some sort of real significant issue with those dates. As long as you get in touch with me before July 10th, I'll try my best to make any accommodations we can to get you to be able to take that exam. If you're very far from campus, so I know some of you might have registered for this course. You might not be regular full-time Rampo students. You might be far away. If you're beyond an hour and a half or so drive to campus, I can also make accommodations for you to take it wherever you actually are. Again, I need to know about that before July 10th, though. Once July 10th passes, I will be expecting you to make it at one of those times that we've outlined. So those are the only two times that you're required to come on campus for this course. All the rest of the content that is delivered through Moodle can be accessed at any point, 24/7. Certainly for office hours, I won't be holding regular office hours on campus, but if you are near campus and you do want to make an appointment with me, we can do that. So I can have a campus presence for you with that. Okay, so textbook. The textbook is absolutely required for this course, especially if you're new to programming. The textbook is going to give you a lot of background material and a lot of depth and more examples than would be found in my lectures. So I highly encourage you to get the textbook immediately. It's at the campus bookstore. You can also buy it online and get it pretty quickly. It's the Introduction to Programming with C++. It's the 3rd edition. For the most part, if you get the 2nd edition or the 1st edition, the concepts, the topics have not changed. Some of the section headings, some of the chapter names are different, so you have to watch out for that if I'm making reference to particular chapter headings in the slide, which I often will. We'll follow the textbook fairly closely. There will be parts of the textbook that we skip through. You'll only be responsible for the parts that I cover in my lecture videos. But again, we'll be following the textbook fairly closely, and it's really a required part of the course. And it's especially in an online format. You're really going to need to take advantage of this textbook and read it carefully in preparations for looking at the lecture recordings and in doing the work. I don't recommend you finding lots of answers about C++ online. Try to use the textbook. Try to use the things that I post on Moodle. The only reason I say that is that C++ is a language that's been around for a long time. There's a huge number of professionals using C++, and a lot of times the content online is not particularly tailored towards you learning the language from scratch. You're likely to pick up pieces of code that you're not really going to understand well, and it's not going to help you all that much going forward. So try, certainly online is a great resource. You're free to use online resources anytime you wish, including in exams, by the way. But you want to try to take the resources that I've provided you or I've pointed you towards, like the textbook, as probably the first place to look and the first place to look most carefully, because it's going to give you the best answers. There's lots and lots of somewhat less than optimal answers online. So I've mentioned Moodle a few times already. The entire course is on my homepage, but it's also on my regular web page associated with Ramapo College. But everything also can be accessed through Moodle. So many of you probably have already used Moodle in some other of your classes. To log into Moodle, you just use your Ramapo username and your Ramapo password, whatever you use to log into Lab Machines, your email, or anything like that. If you've registered for this course and you actually go to another school, once you register, you would be issued a Ramapo email address, and you'll be issued credentials to get into Moodle. If at any point you have any issues logging in or accessing the system, please let me know. It's going to be really crucial that you're kind of locked into Moodle during the course of the semester. All of the material is posted. The material has already been loaded onto Moodle. You will be submitting all of your programming assignments through Moodle, so it's really probably the go-to place for you to get all of your access for this course. So the way I've structured the summer session is I divided the course into actually 30 sort of smaller modules, which are very targeted towards specific topics. They are linked to chapter headings in the textbook, and they generally will, if you look at the recordings for each one of these modules, they'll be about 20 to 30 minutes. A few of them are longer than that. Each module actually consists of several resources. So you'll see my regular lecture slides that you can use. You can flip through at your own pace. You'll see my lecture recordings, which is essentially the same thing that you're seeing now. These lecture recordings will generally contain a lot of live programming. So I will be programming in the videos. That'll give you a little bit of a unique perspective, aside from, it's a little different than reading a textbook or looking at source code that's already been created. Try to pay a lot of attention to those recordings. I think those recordings are probably the most valuable part of the content being offered for this course, because you'll see how I've developed the solutions. One of the frustrating things about learning to program is you'll often look in a textbook at a finished working program, and without really understanding how you get there, that can be very daunting and be very frustrating in that you really don't learn all that much that you can take to your next program. By looking at the lecture videos themselves, I'll go through the thought process. I'll go through the steps required to get to the end result. That's the type of things, or those are the type of skills that once you develop them, we'll be able to take with you to all the rest of the programming assignments throughout the lecture. So those are very critical. I mentioned that all the lecture slides and recordings reference specifically textbook reading. Don't skip that. That's also going to provide you a lot of depth and a lot of background, which is going to be really very helpful to you if you've read before you listen to the lecture recordings. The source code for all the programming examples done in each module is also available. So on Moodle, I've got a zip file that contains all 30 or 30 some odd programming examples. Each one of those is referenced by number within the module slide. So you'll see programming example 1, programming example 2, and you can download those from Moodle and look at the source code themselves. So on Moodle, I've organized all these 30 modules into 5 weeks. It's really more like 4.5 weeks. Our last week ends on a Thursday. I've front-loaded the first couple of weeks with a lot of modules. That's because those modules tend to be a little less dense, but you have a lot of modules to get through the first week and the second week of class. As the semester continues, you'll have a few less modules assigned to you each week. Those modules will be covering trickier concepts, so I expect that you'll probably have to look at those and spend more time with those individual modules, and that's why I've arranged it the way I have. So one of the most important things about an online course is staying on schedule. You're doing this independently to some extent you're required to get through the assignments, which I'll talk about later, and get through all the modules that are listed for the midterm and the final exam. And sometimes students can fall behind, especially in the beginning of the semester if you underestimate the amount of time that you need to spend for this. So you should be working very hard to stay on schedule and to make sure that you've mastered each module that's been assigned for each week. You don't want to fall behind in a course like this. Everything in computer science builds. Each module will require you to understand all the previous modules. And because we only have a 5-week schedule, falling behind, by the time you recognize that there might be a problem, it might be too late. So right away, get started with this and try to stay on schedule the best you can. To help you primarily gauge where you are, I've assigned 12 labs that are, again, associated with each module, or with the roughly half of the modules, and you'll have a few of these each week. You want to take these programs very seriously. They should take you about an hour, maybe a little bit longer towards the end, maybe even a little bit less than an hour towards the beginning. They are designed to be very specifically targeted towards the lessons that you saw in the previous modules, and they're an excellent way for you to gauge whether or not you're really picking up the concepts. So one of the most important things about programming and learning to program is not necessarily having the end result, it's the process. I urge you to write your programs alone, by yourself, without help from others, to the best of your ability first. If you get stuck, contact me and I'll work you through the problems. But you don't want to get into a situation where you're having someone else maybe do most of the thinking for you. It's much more beneficial for you to struggle through these labs, as I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The labs are not worth that much. They're designed to be sort of a low-pressure environment for you to struggle and learn to program. I liken programming to playing sports, playing a musical instrument. It's a learned skill. You can't become, a good basketball player by watching basketball. You have to actually play. It's the same thing with programming. You will not become a good programmer. You will not become an effective programmer by watching me program or by reading programs on a textbook. You have to actually go through and do the programming. So that's what these labs are all designed for. You're required to upload them by the due date. Each lab will be due on a given Saturday night, at midnight on Saturday night. You can certainly complete them ahead of time. That's no problem. The first week you might have 3 all due on that one Saturday. Do not let them go to the last day. Sometimes you might find that they do take you a little bit longer than you might think. Try to kind of maintain a pace and get a few of them done throughout the week. All the details of all the labs, the deadlines, all of that kind of stuff is found on the course syllabus, which is linked on Moodle. They're clearly marked on Moodle on each week, and of course on the actual web page for our summer session. Homework is kind of a misnomer. The labs are homework too, obviously, because we're not meeting on campus. Everything is done at home. But the homework projects are larger programs. They are worth more, and I'll go over what everything is worth shortly. They're going to take you longer. Some of these homework assignments are certainly going to take you a few hours. Maybe in the beginning, you might be able to get through the first one a little bit more quickly. All the due dates are aligned with Saturday nights across the campus, across the semester. Okay, so the first Saturday evening is July 11th. At midnight, the first batch of labs will be due, and the first homework will be due, all at the same time, and you'll upload those each independently to Moodle. Again, all of the due dates or all the due date times are 11:59 p.m., meaning you have until midnight that night, a Saturday night, to get everything done. Again, all the homeworks and all the labs are already posted. You can certainly work ahead. I strongly suggest that you try to work ahead. However, everything is done in sequence. Okay, so there's no sense to try to do homework 1 before you've looked at all the modules for the first week. It doesn't make sense to go and try to look at homework 3 before you've completed the first 2 weeks worth of work. Again, it's all a sequence. Everything builds here. So you have to proceed through each and every module in order, each and every homework assignment in order, and each and every lab in order. But if you can work ahead, especially towards the beginning of the semester, to buy yourself a little bit more time, that's definitely something that you can do now, and you can upload them at any time. What I'd ask is that you keep them as a draft on Moodle. Don't submit until you're really sure that that's your final version. If you keep it as a draft, you can always re-upload the program as many times as you want before the deadline. In terms of late work, I mentioned for labs, it's the same thing from homework. We are on a very condensed schedule. And again, it's so critical that you do not fall behind that I sort of am imposing a pretty strict penalty, in that absolutely no late work will be accepted at any time. So you have until Saturday night each week to get the work that you were assigned done. Unfortunately, if once midnight happens, Moodle will lock you out from being able to submit anything, and I will not accept it. Of course, if you fall behind and you want to actually go through the programs and get some feedback from me, I will certainly do that, but I will not be able to grade your work. So again, there's a pretty heavy incentive towards staying on schedule. All your labs and homework will be submitted through Moodle. There's going to be some very specific files that I need you to submit. What you want to remember is that I only am interested in your source code. And a lot of this will become a little bit more clear as you start to see me programming in the future module recordings. But Visual Studio, which is the platform that we'll be using, creates a lot of different files, and I only want you to upload one particular file associated with each one of those projects, and that's your .cpp or your source code. In Module 2, Part 2, I go over this in a little bit more detail. It's absolutely critical, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you upload the correct program, the correct file, and that I can actually grade it. So after you submit things to Moodle, I really suggest that you click on the files and make sure that when you click on the files from Moodle and you look at it, it is your program and it is not something else. Again, there's a lot of other files that gets created in the process of programming that are not what I'm looking for. And unfortunately, if you do submit the wrong file, you will get a 0 for that assignment, even if you've done the work. I cannot accept that work after the deadline. Again, just in terms of submitting assignments, I'll go over a little bit more in Module 2 about which files you're looking for. But on Moodle, if you look, each lab, each homework assignment is listed in the associated week. If you click on that, you'll be in a user interface where you can upload those files. And again, saving the changes to submit the file. Required software. So obviously you need an internet connection. You can do anything in this course on Windows, on a Mac, or in Linux. However, everything that I'm doing in the videos is on Windows. Okay, so I'm using Visual Studio in our videos. Visual Studio only works on Microsoft Windows operating systems. It does not work on a Mac. You're free to use your Mac. I have instructions for Xcode posted on Moodle. I can give you instructions on other systems as well if you request them. The only thing that I'll say is that you will be required to use Visual Studio on your midterm and your final exam. So you'll have to use the lab machines on campus to do your programming during those exam sessions. So it would be very, very wise if you have access to a Windows machine to use Windows, to use Visual Studio. There's detailed instructions on Moodle about how to download Visual Studio and install it in your home. It's a free piece of software. If you have no access to a Windows machine, I recommend that you come to the computing labs on campus or somehow get yourself to a Windows machine at least a few times to familiarize yourself with Visual Studio. You'll see me using Visual Studio in all of these recorded lectures as well, because you will definitely have to use it. And you want to, just like any program, whether it's programming or just a word processor, Um, every program takes a little practice to use and to figure out where the buttons are and the menus and all that stuff. And so I certainly don't want you to come on campus for the midterm exam and use Visual Studio for the first time, because you're going to spend a lot of your time trying to figure out Visual Studio as opposed to trying to figure out how to write C++ code. So don't do that. Grading. So the labs that I mentioned earlier are designed to be sort of a low pressure type of an assignment. I want you to go through the struggles of programming and not panic when things don't go well and when you might have to turn in a program that perhaps doesn't work completely accurately. Labs, you've got 12 of them. They're graded on a 10-point scale. If you do a decent job, you're probably going to get an 8 out of 10, even if there's a small error. You'll get a 10 out of 10 if your program produces the right output. And if you submit really partial work, programs that don't compile, maybe you'll get a 5 out of 10. The labs, the 12 of them comprise a total of 10% of your semester grade. So each lab is less than 1% of your final grade. So again, they're designed as exercises for you more than they are a huge determinant of your grade. Homework assignments, you have 4 of them. Those are worth a total of 20%. I grade those on a 100-point scale. I grade those much more critically. So where labs, if they work, I'm going to give you a 10 out of 10. I'm not going to really deduct a lot of points for small issues. For homework assignments, I'm going to pay much more detailed attention, give you a little bit better feedback, more detailed feedback, and more detailed deductions, frankly, on the way you're writing your code. Each homework assignment is worth 5% of your total semester grade. So they do comprise a fairly nice chunk of your graded material. You want to take those very seriously each week. Your midterm and your finals, they make up the remaining 70% of the points awarded for the semester. Each one of those exams, as I said, they're 3 hours long. You will be required to do programming. So you'll probably be required to do 1 or 2 programs that are approximately the same length as some of the labs. So again, as you're doing your labs throughout the semester, you want to be constantly asking yourself, could I do this myself, alone, in a timed environment, in a midterm or a final? If you're getting lots and lots of help from other people, that answer is probably no, and you're going to have a lot of difficulty on the midterm. Use the labs to practice critical thinking. Use the labs to practice solving and finding bugs yourself, because you're going to have to find bugs in your program yourself on a midterm and a final. The individual exams are not curved, but the final letter grade assignment over the course of the semester will be kind of adjusted based on how well the class is done. So, if we're in a situation where there might be nobody in the class that got above a 90, certainly the high 80s would then start to move you into the A range. So I will curve somewhat the end of the year final letter grade, but exams will be always scored as the raw percentage of what you got correct. Okay, so lastly, communication. In an online setting, this can be a real challenge, and you do not want to feel like I'm not a resource. Don't feel that you don't have an instructor kind of guiding you, and that if I haven't said it in the recording, maybe that's all that I have to say. That's not true. I want you to reach out to me and ask questions and get feedback from me. So, our main way of communicating will be email. I'll email you once or twice a week reminding you, what needs to be done. But I expect you to be emailing me and questions that you have, issues with any programs. If you have problems with a program that you're working on, a lab, a homework, email me the source code. Attach it as a complete file, and I'll look at it. I'll compile it, and I'll try to figure out what the problem is, and I'll get back to you pretty quickly. You can expect especially during the weekdays, I'll get back to you probably within an hour, probably quite a bit less than that. Over the weekends, there might be a little bit larger delay. Certainly in the middle of the night, you're not going to get a response from me right away, but I will be very, very quick to get back to you via email. You also want to be checking Moodle regularly. There might be some updates, slides, new programs posted, something like that. So make sure that you keep in touch with that. Make sure that you're checking your email regularly. If you feel that you need to kind of bring in your computer and just show or sit down with me and look at your program, email me. We can make an appointment. Again, like I said, I'm not on campus regularly during the summer, but I'm on campus frequently. So it's not necessarily predictable. I don't follow a specific schedule, but I can get to campus. Just let me know, the day before at the latest, what that you want to come in for some extra help, and we should be able to pretty much make most days work during regular business hours. If none of that works, or if you're really geographically far away, we can also use Skype and video conference, and I can take a look at your screen and that kind of stuff as well, and we'll work that out together when the need arises. Okay, so that sort of concludes the course policy discussion. If there's any other questions, your first point to look at is the course syllabus. So I'd like you to read carefully all the text that I've written on the course syllabus, and again, that's linked to on Moodle. I put a lot of effort into trying to give you enough information about what to expect in an online course setting. Please read those. They've got some warnings, some pitfalls that some people fall into. If anything's unclear about the policies, if anything's unclear about the timing and the due dates or anything like that, please let me know right away. Other than that, good luck. Please don't forget to contact me whenever you have questions, and please get started right away. Thanks.